A phone call shattered everything. Elena sat in her dimly lit apartment, the cold silence enveloping her as the voice on the other end echoed in her mind. "Your father is dead." Those words, so casual, so indifferent, cut through the years of questions that had lingered in her heart. Had she wanted closure? Or had she been afraid to face the truth? The call was brief, like a cruel joke, but the weight of the message was too heavy to ignore. The man who had abandoned her, who had disappeared from her life when she needed him most, was now gone. Elena's hands trembled, and a cold shiver ran down her spine as she processed the truth. The same man who had left without a word, without a single backward glance, had lived a life that Elena never knew about. How had he died? What had become of him? As the fog of disbelief slowly lifted, anger took its place. The questions that had haunted her for years surged to the surface. What had he left behind? Why had he never come back? And most importantly, why had she waited so long to find the answers? She stood up, the phone still in her hand, and made a decision in that very moment. She would find him, no matter the cost. The man who had destroyed her life, and left her to pick up the pieces, would face her wrath. She would make him pay. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she stood at the edge of the familiar city streets, her mind racing with a mixture of fear and anger. The decision to leave her life behind was not an easy one, but it was the only path left. She had to find him, had to uncover the truths buried deep within the past. What had her father been doing all these years? What lies had he told? There were too many unanswered questions, and the pain of never knowing the answers had consumed her. As she boarded the bus, the feeling of finality pressed down on her, a constant reminder that this was a journey with no return. The streets blurred as she looked out the window, her thoughts drifting to her childhood. She had lived in the shadow of his absence, a void that had shaped her into the woman she was now. She had tried to move on, to build a life without him, but the scars ran deep. Now they were all coming to the surface, demanding her attention. The pain was raw, but it was also fuel. With every mile that passed, Elena felt the anger inside her grow stronger. It wasn't just about finding her father. It was about finally reclaiming the pieces of herself that had been broken by his desertion. As the bus moved through the city, Elena's mind replayed the years she spent wondering where her father had gone. She had been a little girl when he walked away, leaving behind a broken home and a heart full of unanswered questions. For years, she thought she would get the answers, that one day he would return. But time had a way of erasing memories, and what was once a burning desire to find him had been reduced to a quiet ache. Now the ache had turned to something more powerful: rage. She had let years pass by, each one marking another moment she lost in his absence. But now, she was going to confront him. No more waiting, no more hoping. It was time to get the answers. As the city blurred past her, Elena knew that everything was about to change. The journey she had started would lead her to a man who had once been everything to her, but had become nothing but a shadow. The anger she felt was not just about him. It was about the life he had stolen from her. She would make him face her, make him answer for everything. The bus arrived at its last stop, and Elena stepped off into the unknown. The streets here were unfamiliar, far from the life she had left behind. The cold air bit at her skin, but it did little to numb the fire inside her. She checked the address she had written down, the last piece of information she had about her father's whereabouts. Her heart raced in anticipation, but also with a hint of fear. What would she find? Was he the man she had imagined all these years, or had he become someone completely different? The street was lined with old buildings, their facades worn and neglected. Elena walked briskly, her footsteps echoing off the pavement. Every step brought her closer to a man she had never truly known, but had always wondered about. She could feel the tension building, the weight of everything she had carried inside her for years. This was it, the moment of truth. The building she had been looking for came into view. It was nondescript, blending into the worn neighborhood. Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward, knowing that nothing would be the same after today. The door creaked open as Elena stepped into the building. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and years of neglect. She glanced around, taking in her surroundings. The hallway stretched before her, lined with peeling wallpaper and flickering lights. It was nothing like she had imagined. This was the place where her father had made his life. Had he really chosen this? Was this the life he had wanted when he left her all those years ago? The silence around her was oppressive, the only sound being the soft echo of her footsteps. Elena moved forward, her senses heightened, each step a reminder that she was about to meet the man who had abandoned her. She reached the door at the end of the hallway and paused. A sense of finality washed over her. This was it. The moment she had been waiting for. The moment that would determine everything. She knocked once, the sound echoing down the empty hall, and waited. Her heart pounded as she braced for what was to come. The city was a maze, its winding streets and alleys hiding secrets beneath its surface. Elena, 29-year-old woman, walked with purpose, her eyes scanning the crowded faces, each one a potential lead. She had no idea where to start, but she had to try. Every step she took brought her closer to the answers she needed. She had to find out where her father had been, what kind of life he had lived. The man who had abandoned her was now a ghost, and she was determined to bring him back to the surface. The search wasn't just for answers, it was for justice. The pain of growing up without him had shaped her, made her into someone strong. Someone capable of handling the truth, no matter how hard it might be. As she walked past the old buildings and crowded shops, her thoughts raced. She couldn't help but wonder what he had been doing all these years. Had he ever thought of her? Was there any remorse for what he had done? Elena's fists clenched at her sides, the questions swirling in her mind. She needed to find him, and she wouldn't stop until she did. Elena's search led her to an old diner tucked away on a quiet street corner. The faded neon sign buzzed faintly, and the smell of coffee and grease hung in the air. She stepped inside, her boots clicking on the worn wooden floor. The diner was almost empty, save for a few patrons scattered around the booths. She took a seat at the counter, the worn leather of the stools creaking beneath her weight. As she ordered a coffee, her mind wandered to her father again. She had to find someone who knew about him, someone who could help her piece together the fragments of his life. She couldn't do this alone. The waitress, a woman in her mid-40s with short black hair, brought the coffee to Elena's table, giving her a curious glance before walking away. Elena took a sip, her fingers tapping nervously on the mug. She needed to find someone, anyone, who could tell her where her father had gone and what he had done. The silence of the diner pressed down on her as she waited for her next move. As Elena sipped her coffee, a man sitting at the far end of the counter caught her eye. He was an older man, probably in his late 50s, with a rough face and a heavy-set build. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, she felt a strange connection. She didn't know why, but something about him felt familiar. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, like he knew exactly what she was thinking. He nodded slightly, then gestured for her to come over. Elena hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to approach, but something inside her told her this man knew something about her father. She stood up, her heart racing, and made her way over to his booth. As she sat down, the man didn't say anything for a moment. He simply studied her, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Elena could feel the weight of his gaze, but she didn't back down. She was here for answers, and she wouldn't leave without them. The man's voice was gravelly, rough like the years he had lived. "You're looking for your father, aren't you?" he asked, his gaze still fixed on Elena. Her heart skipped a beat, and she nodded. "I can help you," he continued, leaning in slightly. "But it won't be easy. He's not the man you think he is." Elena's pulse quickened. What did he mean by that? She had spent so many years imagining who her father was, and now this man was telling her it wasn't true. The words hung in the air, thick with mystery. "What do you know about him?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. The man smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "I know more than you can imagine," he said cryptically. "But first you need to understand something about him. He wasn't just a man who abandoned you. He had his reasons, and those reasons are dark. You want to find him, you're going to have to face those truths. All of them. Elena left the diner feeling more confused than ever. The man's words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't seeing. She had come for answers, but all she had gotten were more questions. As she walked down the street, her thoughts raced. Her father wasn't the man she had imagined, and whatever dark secrets he was hiding, Elena was now determined to uncover them. She had no choice but to continue her search, to dig deeper into the past. The man had told her that her father had reasons for leaving, but what could those reasons be? Elena knew that the path ahead was going to be difficult. She didn't know what kind of man her father had become, but she was about to find out. With a new sense of determination, Elena made a vow to herself. She would uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Elena's search had led her to a small, dimly lit office in an aging building. The man at the desk, a middle-aged private investigator, looked up as she entered. His sharp gaze assessed her, and his lips twisted into a knowing grin. "Looking for someone, huh?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Elena nodded. "My father." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of unanswered questions. The investigator leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "You're not going to like what I have to say," he warned. Elena's heart began to race, but she stood firm. "I don't care. I need the truth." The investigator stared at her for a long moment before speaking again. "Your father? He's not who you think he is. You're chasing shadows, girl. But if you're really set on this, I'll help you find him. It won't be pretty, though." Elena's determination only grew stronger. She had come too far to turn back now. She would get the answers, no matter the cost. "I'll take whatever you can give me," she said. "I need to know where he is." The investigator handed Elena a file, thick with documents and photographs. "This is all I could find," he said, his voice tinged with reluctance. Elena took the file with trembling hands, the weight of it sinking into her chest. As she flipped through the pages, she saw images of her father, but they were not the man she remembered. He looked different, older, more rugged, and there was a darkness in his eyes that she hadn't expected. Her mind raced. What had happened to him? What had he become? As she turned the pages, she saw evidence of a life that was far from the one she had imagined. There were pictures of him with people she didn't recognize, in places she had never seen. Her father, it seemed, had become someone else entirely. Elena closed the file, her breath shallow. "This is just the beginning," the investigator said, watching her closely. "There's more, but this is the part you need to understand first." Elena nodded, a mix of anger and confusion swirling inside her. She had known her father was a mystery, but she hadn't anticipated this. She needed to know more, and she was willing to do whatever it took. As Elena left the investigator's office, she felt the weight of the file in her hands, as if it contained all the answers she had been searching for. But the answers only raised more questions. Her mind churned with the images of her father she had just seen. She had spent her entire life wondering who he really was, and now she was starting to piece together a darker picture than she had ever imagined. The file had shown her a man who wasn't just a victim of circumstance. He had made choices that had led him down a path she couldn't fully understand. She stood outside the office building, the cool night air biting at her skin, and she knew she couldn't stop now. She had to follow the trail, no matter how dark it became. She couldn't let go of the need for closure, for answers. But the more she learned, the more she realized that her father might not be the man she had spent so many years imagining. Was he a villain? Or was he simply a man trapped by his own decisions? Elena didn't know, but she was determined to find out. She would face whatever truths lay ahead. The next day, Elena found herself standing in front of a rundown bar on the outskirts of town. The file had led her here. Her father's name had appeared in connection with the place. It was a dive, the kind of bar you wouldn't go near unless you had to. Elena's stomach churned as she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The dim lighting inside did little to ease the tension she felt. The air smelled of stale beer and smoke, and the chatter of the few patrons faded as Elena walked to the bar. She ordered a drink, but she wasn't here for the alcohol. She was here for answers. The bartender, a man in his 40s, eyed her with curiosity but said nothing. Elena leaned in, her voice low but firm. "I'm looking for information on someone. Someone who used to come here." The bartender's eyes narrowed, and for a moment he seemed to consider whether he should speak. Finally, he nodded slightly. "You're not gonna like what you hear," he warned, but he didn't stop her. Elena's heart pounded as she prepared for whatever truths the bartender was about to reveal. The bartender leaned in, lowering his voice. "Your father wasn't always the man you think he was. He came here a lot, but not for the reasons you might think. He had a past, a dark one, and it caught up with him." Elena's mind raced as she processed his words. Her father, the man she had once idolized, had a dark side? What had he done? The bartender continued, his voice steady but filled with regret. "He was mixed up with some bad people, people who don't forget. He tried to leave that life behind, but it always followed him." Elena felt her stomach drop. This wasn't the man she had imagined. Her father had been running from something, hiding from something, and it seemed that whatever it was, it had finally caught up to him. "Where is he now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The bartender didn't answer right away. He simply shook his head. "You're asking the wrong people," he muttered. "But you should know, whatever he's running from, it's bigger than you think." Elena's heart raced as she stood before the old warehouse. The address from the file had led her here, to a place she never imagined her father would be connected to. The air was thick with tension, the night dark and cold. She had come this far, but the fear she felt now was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The weight of the file in her hand felt heavier than before, and her pulse quickened with each step closer to the entrance. What would she find inside? She had already uncovered so many secrets, dark, twisted truths about the man she had once idolized. But nothing could have prepared her for this. She had learned that her father had been involved with dangerous people, but this warehouse, this abandoned place, felt like the final piece of the puzzle. Elena paused, her breath visible in the cold night air. She knew this moment would change everything. She had to go inside. The truth was waiting for her, and she couldn't back out now. She stepped forward, her feet crunching on the gravel beneath her, and approached the entrance, determined to face whatever horrors lay beyond. As Elena stepped into the warehouse, the darkness enveloped her. The place smelled of rust and decay, the air thick with the scent of old machinery and dust. She could hear the echo of her footsteps reverberating through the large, empty space. It felt as though the walls were closing in on her, but she kept moving forward, determined to uncover the truth. The faint sound of voices echoed in the distance, causing her to freeze in place. She wasn't alone. Someone else was here. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she moved closer, her footsteps silent on the concrete floor. She needed answers, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a trap. She paused, listening intently, trying to make out the conversation. She couldn't hear the words clearly, but the tone was unmistakable. Anger, frustration, and fear. As she crept closer, a figure appeared from the shadows. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized who it was. It was her father, the man she had been searching for all this time. "Dad?" Elena's voice trembled as she called out into the shadows. The figure in the distance shifted, and her father stepped into the dim light. His face was older, hardened by years of secrets, but there was no mistaking it. The man who had abandoned her all those years ago was standing before her. Her heart twisted as she looked at him, the emotions swirling inside her. Anger, confusion, hurt, it was all there. He didn't look surprised to see her. In fact, he seemed almost resigned to the confrontation. "You shouldn't have come here, Elena," he said, his voice low and cold. "This place, it's not safe for you." Elena took a step forward, her eyes narrowing. "What have you been involved in? Who are these people?" Her father hesitated, the silence stretching between them. "You don't understand. I did what I had to do to survive. You wouldn't understand. Elena's anger flared. I don't need to understand. You abandoned me. You left me to pick up the pieces of my broken life, and now you're telling me I don't understand? She took another step closer. What happened to you? Who are you now? Her father's eyes softened for a moment, but the hardness quickly returned. I didn't have a choice, Elena. You don't know what it was like. You have no idea who I was before. Elena's hands clenched into fists. You don't get to tell me that, not after everything you've done. I was a child. I needed you, and you left me. Her voice was shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. I don't care what your reasons were. You could have come back. You could have tried to fix things, but you didn't. You just disappeared. Her father stepped closer, his voice lowering. I was trying to protect you. The people I was involved with, they wouldn't have hesitated to hurt you if they knew who you were. Elena's heart sank as the realization hit her. So this was your plan? To stay away and protect me by leaving me in the dark? Her father didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to Elena. This is all I have left to give you, he said quietly. You need to know what really happened. The truth, the whole truth. Elena stood frozen, the envelope in her hands. The weight of it seemed impossibly heavy, as though it contained the entire truth of her father's life. She didn't want to open it. She didn't want to know the things it might reveal, but she knew she had to. She had come this far, and she couldn't stop now. With trembling hands, she tore open the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs and documents. As she flipped through them, she saw her father's connections with dangerous men, criminals, gangsters, people she had only heard about in whispers. There were photos of him with faces she didn't recognize, in places she had never been. The truth was unfolding before her, and it was worse than she could have imagined. Her father wasn't just a man running from his past. He was part of something far more sinister. The final photograph was of a man she recognized, someone she had known in her childhood. The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. Her father's betrayal went deeper than she could have ever imagined. As she stared at the photo, her world shifted. Everything she had known was a lie. Elena stood in front of the building, the cold night air biting at her skin. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. Her father had led her here to this confrontation, and now she could feel the weight of the past closing in around her. The truth was in her hands, but she wasn't sure she was ready for it. The photographs, the documents, everything she had uncovered over the last few days had only raised more questions. What had her father really done? How far had he fallen into the darkness he had once tried to escape? The door in front of her seemed like an impenetrable barrier, but Elena knew she couldn't turn back now. She had come this far, and she was about to face the man who had abandoned her, the man who had betrayed her. She stepped forward, her breath shallow, as her hand gripped the doorknob. The cold metal felt like an omen. With a deep breath, Elena pushed the door open and stepped inside, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. Inside the building, the air was thick with tension. Elena's footsteps echoed through the hallway as she made her way deeper into the darkness. The flickering lights above her only added to the eerie feeling of the place. She had no idea what to expect, but she couldn't stop now. The man she was searching for, the one who had left her behind all those years ago, was somewhere in here. Her heart raced as she moved cautiously, her hand resting on the cold metal of the walls for support. She could hear faint voices ahead, low murmurs that sounded like a heated conversation. Elena hesitated for a moment before continuing forward, each step bringing her closer to the truth. As she rounded the corner, her father's voice reached her ears. His words were barely audible, but Elena recognized the tone. Angry, defensive. She froze, listening intently, trying to make out what he was saying. Then, she heard something that made her blood run cold. You should have never come here, Elena, he said. You don't know what you're getting into. Elena's breath caught in her throat. The man she had been searching for was right here. But was he the man she had hoped for? As Elena approached the source of the voice, the dim light revealed her father standing with a man she didn't recognize. The man was tall, with a sharp, menacing look in his eyes. Elena's heart skipped a beat as she realized they were talking about her. She wanted to confront him, to demand the truth, but something held her back. The tension in the room was palpable, and Elena could feel the danger lurking beneath every word. Her father's face was a mixture of guilt and defiance, his posture rigid as he spoke to the man. "She doesn't belong here," her father said, his voice tight. "She won't understand." Elena's fists clenched at her sides. She couldn't stand the way he was dismissing her, as though she was still a child, as though her need for answers didn't matter. She stepped forward, her presence known, and both men turned to face her. The man's eyes narrowed in suspicion, but her father's expression softened, his lips parting as though he wanted to say something, but the words never came. "It's too late for explanations," Elena said, her voice steady, despite the fury building inside her. "I'm not leaving without the truth." Her father's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the coldness in them faltered. He took a step forward, but the tall man beside him grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "No," the man said, his voice sharp. "You don't get to control this anymore." Elena's gaze flicked from her father to the stranger, who was now stepping toward her, blocking her path. "You don't know what you're dealing with," the man said, his tone menacing. Elena stood her ground, refusing to back down. "I know enough," she replied, her voice steady, but filled with the weight of everything she had uncovered. The stranger laughed, a low, hollow sound. "You think you can handle the truth? You think you can handle what your father has done?" Elena felt a surge of anger rise within her. "I'll handle whatever I have to," she said, her eyes locked on her father, searching for any sign of remorse. But he just looked away, his face unreadable. "You're too late," he muttered. "There's nothing you can do now." The stranger's words hung in the air, but Elena's resolve only hardened. "I don't care what you think," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I'm not leaving until I know the truth." The stranger sneered, stepping aside to reveal her father, who now looked even more broken than before. "You want to know the truth?" Her father finally spoke, his voice quiet, full of regret. "You were never supposed to be part of this world. I did everything I could to keep you away from it." Elena's heart clenched as the weight of his words sank in. "You were part of something dangerous," he continued. "I couldn't let you be involved, but I wasn't strong enough to leave it behind." Elena took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me?" Her father's face crumpled, the years of guilt and pain catching up to him. "I thought I was protecting you," he whispered, barely audible. "But I was wrong." Elena stood still, absorbing his words before finally asking, "Is it too late to fix this?" Her father's gaze dropped, his shoulders slumping. "Maybe." "Maybe." Elena reflects on her father's confession, realizing that the journey to healing isn't about the answers, but about finding peace within herself. The weight of the past no longer controls her as she steps forward with a sense of calm and understanding. Elena meets her ally at a cafe. The ally reassures her that peace comes from forgiveness, not from having all the answers. Elena begins to let go of the past, realizing that she no longer needs to seek validation from her father or anyone else. Elena, after some time reflecting, realizes she no longer needs to carry the anger or resentment toward her father. The past has shaped her, but it no longer defines her future. She decides to move forward, focusing on building her own path. Elena returns to her apartment, feeling a sense of change within herself. The anger from the past is gone. The door, once a symbol of her struggles, now represents a new beginning, as Elena steps forward into a future she can shape. Elena walks through the city, feeling empowered and free. The weight of her father's past no longer holds her back. She reconnects with the people who matter and embraces her future, no longer defined by the choices others made. Elena stands on her apartment balcony, gazing at the city. She reflects on the past and realizes that moving forward means finding peace within herself, not seeking closure from her father. For the first time, she feels ready to embrace her future. Elena has an important conversation with her ally at a cafe. She begins to let go of the past, realizing peace comes from forgiveness. She's ready to move forward, understanding that she doesn't need to seek approval from her father anymore. Elena decides to focus on her own future, no longer defined by her father's past actions. The anger and grief have faded, replaced by a quiet strength. She's ready to embrace new possibilities with confidence and peace. Elena returns to her apartment, realizing the changes within herself. She no longer carries the weight of the past. Opening the door to her apartment symbolizes the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one filled with hope and personal growth. Elena walks through the city, feeling free and empowered. She has made peace with the past and is ready for whatever comes next. The world is open to her, and for the first time, she feels in control of her destiny.